Gritty win for the Kings as they take down the Rockets in Houston as Sabonis leaves this game after just a minute of action with a hamstring injury. Obviously, that's very concerning. We don't have any details, but it was non-contact injury. That's scary. And if Sabonis is out for an extended period of time, then the expectations for this team this season kind of go out the window. But no matter what, whether Sabonis is healthy or not, the Kings are going to need this type of grittiness that they showed in this game against Houston if they want to be able to make the playoffs. I mean, this was a huge win because we haven't seen the Kings really win against a good team yet with this new roster that they've constructed. Now, they haven't had a ton of chances. I mean, I think they only had one other chance playing the Warriors. They've either played bad teams or injured teams. And so they racked up some wins, but with the way they lost against the Warriors, I mean, things were looking a little concerning. And so for them to come into Houston and now sweep the season series against the Rockets and do it without Sabonis, show off that depth. Obviously, Jonas Valanciunas coming up huge. The bench just coming up huge. Keon Ellis, Trey Lyles stepping in, everyone off the bench. And it was a super physical game. The technicals were flying as per usual when it's a Kings-Rockets game. It's kind of the weirdest, I don't want to say rivalry, but like I hate this Rockets team. Like every time we play them, there's something. And so that's why I'm really happy that we swept them. And I feel like really for the past 3 seasons, games against the Rockets have been like this. Whether you go back a couple of years and it was Garrison Matthews, obviously now it's Dylan Brooks and Ime Udoka. You know, there's always something going on. Dylan Brooks going at it with DeMar DeRozan. It was a super physical game. Şengün shot 17 free throws. And yet the Kings were able to come out with a big win. But right off the bat, when Sabonis went out of the game, Valanciunas comes in. Şengün went right at Valanciunas twice in a row. He got to the free throw line once. He scored on him once. And so that was definitely concerning because there's a difference between Valanciunas and Sabonis defensively, where Valanciunas has a better chance of blocking a shot or getting a stop if you just go right at him. Sabonis is a little more mobile, but is less likely to actually block a shot. And so what the Rockets did well right away was go at Valanciunas and try to make him move side to side. And so early on, it was a little concerning defensively. Maybe not right away because the Kings got off to that great start and were up massive. And a lot of that was because no one other than Şengün could score, and Şengün wasn't even shooting well. He couldn't hit the mid-ranger. And that was pretty much how the Kings were playing it. They were dropping off. Valanciunas was in the drop. They were giving Şengün that short jumper, and he just couldn't make it, and he couldn't really make free throws. And everyone was kind of chipping in offensively early. You had DeMar hitting a 3, Malik Monk operating really well in the 2-man game with Valanciunas and getting a couple floaters to go. And I was super happy to see that, to see Monk be able to have some success finishing with his floater and actually being able to get to the rim, get into the paint and score, although there were some turnovers there for him early on. There was the one where Monk drove baseline, left his feet, and then you could hear him saying, what did he say? He was like, "Where you going, Debo?" or something like that, because DeRozan, instead of going to the corner where Malik wanted to hit him, he goes up top and Malik leaves his feet and has nowhere to go and turns it over. That was so funny that we could just hear that. But just everything was clicking early on. Keegan hit a 3 and had a massive putback, slam dunk. DeMar threw up an alley-oop to Zach LaVine in transition. Everyone was getting in on it. Kings got up 19-3 at one point. But, of course, like those early leads don't mean a ton. As we saw in the Cavaliers-Celtics game where the Celtics were up 25-3 and still ended up losing. Of course, I think everyone knew early on, like this game is far from over, even though we're up 16 here. And like I said, the Rockets, they got it going because they were getting Şengün into the middle of the floor so he could attack Valanciunas going either way. They got him into spaced out the floor so the help wasn't there, so Şengün could get going at Jonas Valanciunas. And then they were also just working the pick and roll really well, especially after the timeout. There's a Kings timeout when it was 21-9. That's when Lyles came in as the backup center, and the Kings just couldn't defend the pick and roll. Şengün was rolling right to the rim. The Kings weren't affecting the pass at all. They were just easily finding him. Şengün was finishing so easily at the rim. And so in those Lyles minutes at center, it got pretty worrying because once we learned that Sabonis wasn't going to return, then, well, now it's like we're back to what we were before the trade deadline where great, we have Valanciunas as our center, but now we're back to the same problem of Lyles having to play the backup center, which isn't great. And it's not just defensively, it was offensively that the Kings went cold because we've seen this before this season where the Kings don't really know how to play offense and they don't know how to run their offense and get good looks when they don't have a true center who they can play through in the post or who's going to set big screens. With Lyles, he's going to come up and set a screen, but it's not going to be as big as a Sabonis or a Valanciunas screen. And he's just going to pop out to the perimeter and hopefully you can find him and he'll hit a three. And that's kind of what opens up the offense. But if you're not hitting those threes, then the offense can go very cold when we don't have a center. And that's why the addition of Jonas Valanciunas was so huge and what won us this game. And the only offense the Kings were really getting was out in transition. Zach LaVine had a nice take before the defense got set. But because they weren't getting a whole ton of stops, then they weren't really getting out in transition either. Amen Thompson started to become a problem on the offensive glass, which is kind of what I expected because we were having DeMar DeRozan guard him. And that went much better than expected, having DeMar on Amen Thompson. I thought that Amen would use his athleticism to get by DeRozan a lot more, but that's not really what happened. We had DeMar on Amen for a little bit and LaVine as well. And really the only problem was a few offensive rebounds. Thompson had 4. And so the Kings limiting him in transition and having Keegan be able to guard Jalen Green and try to shut him down, and the Rockets not taking advantage of going at DeMar or going at Zach LaVine, that helped us out big time. And yes, the Rockets were getting some offensive rebounds, but the Kings answered right back with some of their own. It was 13-13 in terms of offensive rebounds in this game. They had one possession in that first quarter where they got a ton of offensive rebounds, missed multiple really good looks inside, and then all 5 guys committed to one rebound. Rockets get it, go the other way for an easy layup. So that was frustrating, but that first quarter ended 25-21. Obviously a little disappointing after you were up 19-3, but also it's not like that was really unexpected when Sabonis went out, and so then that backup center position becomes more of a problem, and you don't know exactly how you're going to play in those minutes. We saw the same rotation as last game in terms of Markelle Fultz coming in at the start of the second quarter, playing 4 minutes, and then not playing in the second half. I still feel like he could play some more because he came in and was really good. And we had a lineup of him, Monk, LaVine, LaRavia, Lyles. So it's a 3-guard lineup, but Markelle Fultz was amazing defensively. Got a steal. That led to an and one for himself on the other end. Also hit a nice mid-ranger and was just doing some amazing things defensively. He got another play where he knocked the ball away and almost forced a turnover. Had to go out of bounds with 4 seconds on the shot clock. He was making some really nice plays. He's just been making such a positive impact since we signed him. But the game really picked up offensively in that second quarter. The Rockets started to get some corner 3-point looks, and the pace just really upped in that second quarter. And the Kings just had some bad defensive lapses where they would just lose a defender or not pick someone up soon enough. And the Rockets really started to get it going from outside. And on the other end, you had the Rockets guarding Jake LaRavia with Steven Adams. And that was something that I was hoping that we could punish. And LaRavia missed his first 3-point attempt. And then after that, he was just passing up attempt after attempt. And so you're letting the Rockets off the hook. LaRavia has not been a high volume guy this season, but he's been very efficient from 3. He has honestly barely taken any as a King, but how much he was hesitating when Steven Adams was sagging way off of him. We needed him to just fire some of those. And eventually he did get one and hit it. And it was just the difference between him. It took him so many times before he took his next 3-point attempt He passed up so many. And then you just have Trey Lyles gets to the corner, defender all over him, just lets it fly and hits it. And obviously they're different players. Lyles is more comfortable just letting them fly for three, and he has a quicker release. But we definitely needed LaRavia taking those 3-point shots. Even if he's missing them, he's a good enough shooter that he should be shooting them. But I really like the offensive games of both Keegan and Keon. Keegan has just been looking so much more comfortable in attacking off the dribble and kind of knowing what matchups he can punish and when to punish them, how to punish them. One play, he got the ball in the corner, had Şengün on him, and all the space in the world. Nobody there to help. So he just goes straight at Şengün. I mean, Şengün's a big guy, bigger than Keegan. And Keegan goes right at him, muscles him out of the way, and lays it up for an easy finish. And I think we've been seeing way more of that type of play from Keegan. And that's huge because it means the other team can't hide bad defenders on Keegan. He was also letting them fly from deep very confidently. That's something he's been doing. He's just been playing much better offensively in the last month or two. And then Keon Ellis. Keon was showing his all-around offensive game, not just a spot-up shooter. He was getting on the ball, getting to the mid-range, getting himself into the paint for these short shots, looking confident, handling the ball, taking a Valanciunas screen, getting himself right into the middle of the court, and looking comfortable knocking that down. And that's super important in today's NBA, where you need your 3-and-D guys to be more than just 3-and-D guys. They need to have some sort of other move that they can go to if they get run off the 3-point line. They need to be able to get inside the arc and make good decisions. And again, not have the other team hide really bad defenders on them. Like, you need to be able to punish these, and Keegan and Keon were doing exactly that. Defensively, the Kings tried to adjust a little bit to that Şengün pick and roll, so Keon was sending Van Vliet away from the screen. That was definitely a good idea, to try to mix it up and not allow them to get these easy pocket passes into Şengün and get him going towards the rim, force Van Vliet away. They still try to make the pocket pass, and Keon, active with his feet, gets the kick ball. I feel like when the Kings defense really struggled, it was when DeRozan and Monk were on the floor at the same time. Both of them just are, they're not good 3-point defenders. They're not closing out well. They're two guys who can fall asleep a little. And so that's really what the Rockets were taking advantage of. But then Valanciunas really just started to dominate. He was setting great screens, getting into these two-man games with multiple players, both Monk and LaVine. He had a face-up jumper. He had a two-man game with DeMar DeRozan, where DeRozan found him and Valanciunas got the and one at the rim. Then he got a block on Jalen Green. He had a few of those this game. There's just a beautiful give and go sequence between LaVine and Valanciunas, where like LaVine was going 100 miles per hour, so I was a little worried something was going to go wrong, but he was in control the entire time and found Valanciunas for the dunk. And then they ended the quarter really strong with Keon getting a steal, or I think they counted it as a block, but it was pretty much just a strip on Jalen Green. And Keon set a career high in steals with 5. I really feel like it should be 6, because I mean, I think that block, that it's always weird how they count those. Like, Fred Van Vliet is always a guy that gets a ton of blocks, but like, he's 6 foot. They're all just steals, but right as a player's going into their shot. But anyways, he gets that strip. Keegan on the other end gets a pass from LaVine and hits a tough movement 3, and the Kings end the half up 63-59. Both teams scored 38 points in that second quarter. To start the second half, the Kings really tried to play through DeMar DeRozan in the post, and it worked pretty well. Malik Monk got free for 3. I really liked DeRozan's playmaking out of the post in this game. He also drew a couple of fouls and had a really nice finish. But I think the thing that worked really well for the Kings, sometimes they can get stuck into going to DeRozan in the post for too many possessions in a row. It can work, like 3 possessions in a row, but I feel like there's just kind of a feel thing where the coaching staff or the players on the court, like, they got to feel the time and place in the game where it's like, okay, we need to go to something else now. And I feel like that's something DeRozan did really well in this game, that sometimes he doesn't do well. His passing was really good. He was getting off the ball when he needed to get off the ball. And then they get into the two-man game between Monk and Valanciunas. Valanciunas gets a floater to go. Then we get it to Levine, and Levine snakes a screen and gets to his spot in the mid-range. And so I feel like they diversified the offense really well. And you even had Keon Ellis going to a pump fake and then a step through move, which was just nasty. But on the other end, Jalen Green got it going, and Keegan and the rest of the team did a good job on him in the first half. Got it going. He beat Keegan a few times, and that forced the Kings to go into a zone, and immediately the first possession of that zone, Keegan gets a steal in the passing lanes. And the Kings went to the zone multiple times. They just kind of mixed it in. But that third quarter is really where things got physical, and Dillon Brooks and DeMar started to, chirp at each other, and Brooks pushes, and it's a double tech, which it's kind of lame. It was a double tech when Dillon Brooks is the guy who shoved DeMar. But it got very physical. The officiating got a little bit questionable in that third quarter. There were multiple times when Lyles came in. I mean, even in the first half, Lyles was getting hacked so badly inside, and he just could not get to the free throw line. Eventually he did, after he got a big rebound, then ran the floor, got to the line, and then of course he missed both. But I mean, the Kings let Şengün go one-on-one at Lyles. That didn't work very well, and so then they had to switch it up after that, pretty much just the first possession that Lyles was guarding Şengün in the second half. But Lyles, he gave it right back to him, goes down the other end, gets multiple offensive rebounds off his own misses, and gets one to go. And finally, we got a Şengün illegal screen call. I mean, Lyles was battling. It's a tough matchup, obviously, him being asked to go out there and guard Alperen Şengün. But he was just in there battling. I thought his box outs were very, very good. But there was a point in the game where the Kings were up 2, and they just were missing some shots. Like I said, Lyles missed a couple of free throws in a row. You just had guys missing some threes. LaRavia started to actually let him fly a little bit, but he was missing. And other guys were just missing some shots. And so it felt like a point in the game where the Rockets could have grabbed control of the game. And Levine pulls up for a big transition 3 to go up 5 and give us some breathing room. Felt like that was a pretty big play. And then Keon Ellis happened. And Keon is really one of the few players in the NBA that can truly take over a game on defense. Everyone knows about guys who can take over the game on offense. And there are a lot of guys that can take over a game offensively. There are very few that can do it defensively. Like even great defenders, some of them don't even have the ability to take over a game like this. Like for example, Keegan, he's a great defender. And he can absolutely take a single guy out of a game. But I wouldn't say he ever takes over a game defensively. But Keon, with his ability to just generate so many steals and get the team going in the other direction in transition with these advantages, take away sure buckets from the other team, just these complete swings where he gets multiple steals in a row. It's one of the most fun things to watch. So when the Kings couldn't really get some offense, he gets 2 steals in a row. One of them was taking away pretty much a sure bucket from the Rockets down low. And the Kings were able to end the quarter with DeMar getting double teamed. He found Lyles. Lyles finds LaRavia down low. LaRavia gets the finish. Kings go up 7 going into the fourth quarter. The fourth quarter actually started in a pretty similar fashion to that of the third quarter, where the Kings are trying to play through DeMar DeRozan. And DeMar was drawing double teams, and he found Keon for a 3, then drew a foul, then had a really nice take for a reverse. So it felt like pretty much an exact copy of what happened in the third quarter. Not just because we were going to DeMar, but also because then he was attracting so much attention, and there was one possession where we came up empty. And at that moment, DeMar on the next possession gets it in the post, and I'm like, okay, maybe it's time to go to someone else here. And what does he do? He kicks it out, gets it to Levine. Levine drives, and I mean, the possession wasn't perfect, and Keon had to take a tough 3, and he got fouled on it. Luckily, it's not like the possession was perfect, but it was just DeRozan realizing hey, it's time to get someone else going here. He gets off the ball, doesn't just try to take it himself in the post again. And I felt like it was at the exact right time in the game. We also had some great defensive plays. Keon getting a steal facing away from the ball. Trey Lyles battling against Steven Adams down low, rebounding. There was even one possession where it was just like a perfect defensive possession. The switches were on point, the rotations were on point. They get the rebound, everything's beautiful. We're really pulling away here. And then Keon comes down and just like throws it right to Tari Eason. Tari Eason goes the other way and Keon gifts him an and one. So it's just like, man, it was such a perfect defensive possession. We have this chance to go up big and then we do that. So it was unfortunate, but it didn't turn out to be too bad. And even the next possession, I think it was LaVine had a bad turnover, but then he got a steal right back the other way. And Monk drew that transition take foul. Also, Ime Udoka got teed up at some point in the fourth, I think it was. So it got a little sloppy there. Like Keon got another steal, pushes it up to Monk. We're in transition, and Monk tries to throw this behind the back pass to LaVine, and that kills the possession. It's like, come on, man! Like this is the opportunity to go for the kill shot. And even earlier in the game, he threw 2 dumb alley-oop passes. Like Malik was killing me. He had 5 turnovers. Zach LaVine also had some really dumb turnovers. But the Malik ones were infuriating because after the last game, he said, you know, I got to be better. I can't be throwing these wild alley-oop passes. And early in this game, he threw 2 bad alley-oop passes. It's just like, come on. And it's like the fourth quarter, you're throwing a behind the back pass. What are you doing, man? But look, we didn't get punished for it. He had some big buckets late. For a lot of that fourth quarter, down the stretch, it was Keon in the game with the rest of the starters plus Valanciunas. And LaVine was sitting on the bench, and that went pretty well. Tari Eason had hit a couple of wing threes, but DeRozan was just hitting the important shots. Monk just had some really nice offensive plays. Like there were some infuriating plays from Monk, some what do you do in plays, but then there were some really nice plays. He hits a midi, he gets that 2-man game going with Valanciunas. Had a really nice play where he tapped a rebound to another King. Keegan locked up Jalen Green twice on one possession. You know, he locks him up once. Rockets get the offensive rebound, just locks him up again. And Valanciunas, he was in foul trouble. He had 5 fouls, but he was still out there being a presence defensively. He wasn't shying away from the physicality, and it was scary, but he was able to do it without picking up that 6th foul, like forced a jump ball that he didn't win, but the Kings got possession of it. And so the Kings went up 12, timeout with 3 minutes, 23 seconds. That's when LaVine came back in for Keon Ellis. You know, in those moments, I would rather have LaVine coming in for Malik Monk, keeping Keon out there, especially when Keon was making such a big impact. But, you know, we were up 12, and the Rockets aren't the type of offensive team that are necessarily going to punish us, and they weren't really punishing us in this game. Against a better offensive team, you know, maybe it gets a little more worrying if we're taking Keon out there. But once LaVine came back in, I loved how they gave the ball to DeMar, but they didn't just say, okay, clear out the side, go to work. They had LaVine and Valanciunas both setting screens for him to get deeper inside the arc and get to a much better spot to take a mid-ranger. And that worked well. And I've been asking for that. Like LaVine screening for DeRozan, that's what we got to really go to. And if you want to combine that with a Valanciunas screen as well, that's all good. Like I think we really have something with LaVine setting screens for DeRozan, because no one wants to leave Zach LaVine, especially if he pops out to the perimeter. And that just lets DeMar get good positioning. Then Jonas Valanciunas just had some big plays. He got an offensive rebound. Jalen Green hit a tough 3 to cut it to 10, but it was never really too much of a worry. Valanciunas had that play where he hustles back on defense to get the steal in transition. Monk split the trap, fed LaVine for the dunk, and then just to cap it all off, Valanciunas gets that huge block, gives him the finger wag. He looked exhausted, but he was just so good. This was just a massive win for the Kings to get going in the right direction here. And, you know, it's scary to not know the situation of Domantas Sabonis right now, but this was just a really solid performance. And, you know, some of the turnover issues were still there, but 13 turnovers against a very good Rockets defense, like I'll take that every time. You know, Monk and LaVine, still some of the turnovers are head scratchers. Stop throwing alley-oops, but I think the offense looked pretty smooth. So going over some individual stat lines, DeRozan, he played 40 minutes, had 21 points and 6 assists. Felt like he just constantly came up with the big shot when we needed it. And he contributed so much to the Kings offense, feeling like it had flow. Because when we went to him in the post or just gave him the ball on the wing, he was just making really good decisions with the basketball. Levine had 20 on 8 for 16 shooting, 6 rebounds, 4 assists, a couple of steals. He had 4 turnovers. He had one that the game was pretty much over, but it was just like, it was such a bad turnover where we just need to like dribble this out and he just throws it away. With him, you do see him getting in trouble. Like, he cannot be the primary ball handler. You see him getting in trouble where he picks up his dribble and instead of taking a tough shot, he like leaves his feet and tries to make a tough pass. So he definitely gets himself into trouble there, but a very solid game for him and was great in transition like he normally is. Monk, 16 points, 4 assists, 5 turnovers. You know, that 4 assists, 5 to 5 turnover ratio isn't great. It's also not even good. It's actually horrendous. It continues to be a concern. Like, he's not a steady passer. He's going to go for the flashy passes. He's going to try crazy stuff. And that's just who he is. And so, you know, we shouldn't really try to put him into a different mold. But that is kind of what he's being asked to do, be put into a different mold. But he came up with some big plays down the stretch. Didn't turn the ball over late, which is important, obviously. And then Keegan, 13 points. I think most of them were in the first half. I think he had 11. It just feels like he's been kind of getting more involved in the offense, and that's kind of what I expected. Once the offense finds more flow, that's where Keegan finds his opportunities, finds his shot attempts, and he's been shooting them, knocking them down at a solid percentage, and defensively he was great. Off the bench, you had Valanciunas playing 30 minutes, scoring 15 points, 14 rebounds, 4 steals, and 3 blocks. He was a menace defensively. Early on, like, he was getting toyed with a little bit in space, and the foul trouble there was concerning. But I feel like the Kings, as a team defensively, did a better job on Şengün. Like, as the game went on in the second half, he still got his. He still had the moments where he was able to go one-on-one. But I feel like they started to figure out how to make Şengün a little bit more uncomfortable without just giving other guys wide open shots. But Valanciunas was massive, scoring the ball, rebounding the ball. He had 5 offensive rebounds. Being a solid player that we could run the offense through as a hub, just like we do with Sabonis. Obviously, there's more pick and roll rather than dribble handoff with Valanciunas versus Sabonis. But we still saw Valanciunas' decision-making with the ball in his hands, and it was solid. And then we had Keon, 27 minutes, 12 points, 5 steals, 5 rebounds. Add a block in there. 4 for 5 from the field. Amazing game from him. Defensively in the second half just took over. Lyles had to come in and play 17 minutes. And Lyles is a guy who's now, he's in the rotation sometimes. He's out of the rotation sometimes. But he's just got to step in and play different roles. Sometimes he's asked to play the center. Sometimes he's asked to play the 4. And I thought he battled valiantly down low inside against the big bodies of Şengün and Steven Adams, who, I mean, Steven Adams limited him to 1 offensive rebound. Yeah, he only played 8 minutes, but Steven Adams is a beast on the offensive glass. Laravia, 16 minutes, 5 points, 4 rebounds, 1 for 4 from 3. I just want to see him let that thing fly, but a solid, really solid defensive game for him. I thought he was super good. And then Fultz played the 4 minutes, went 2 for 2 from the field, 1 for 1 from the free throw line. Perfect game for him, 5 points and assists. No turnovers, no fouls. Solid 4 minutes there. Still think he could get more playing time. You know, I don't know exactly where that comes, but I think a team that needs point guard play, and he's playing really well on both ends of the floor. You know, I feel like we can find some more minutes for him. The Kings' next game is against the Mavericks, a Mavericks team that the Kings beat recently in overtime, a team that is ravaged by injuries, especially at the center position, as we all know, as we all saw. And if you remember back in the game, the way that we won that game against the Mavericks was going Twin Towers, Sabonis and Valanciunas. I don't expect that to be the case, even if Sabonis were to play and be healthy, which hopefully he is. But this is a massive game because I think the Mavericks are going to lose tonight, and that would put the Kings ahead of them in the standings, I think. No matter what happens, the Kings do have the tiebreaker against the Mavericks, which is important, but just getting another game against them would be huge. And I think it's the type of game where we can definitely survive without Sabonis because Valanciunas is great, and it's not a team that we need a bunch of size against. But we have to be better taking care of the ball than we were last time we played against the Mavericks, and I feel like we should be because I think the team is starting to. I don't think this is ever going to be a team that's the best in the league in terms of not turning the ball over, just with the way it's constructed. But it's just about coming down from where we were getting 18, 19, 20 turnovers, and lately it's been better. So this is a super winnable game and a super important game. Anyways, that is it for this episode of the Roll Report. I will be back on Monday to recap that game against the Mavericks, so I will see you guys then. Peace.